Hey everyone, welcome. It's our second episode of Argam Talks. Today I'm honored to have Max Sapo here. He's the CEO of Happyverse. Thank you for joining. He's in Dubai right now. He was able to squeeze in some time, so thanks for joining, Max.
Thanks for having me. Very excited. I remember we had a really good conversation at the Vapicon Summit a few weeks ago, and so
Yeah.
yeah, let's continue.
So I would first let's tell our audience kind of what is a little bit about you very quickly. I know you've been in tech for a while. And specifically, what is Happyverse as you know, as quickly and as to the point as you can.
Absolutely. Well, I started my career in investment banking and private equity, but then after business school, I joined Google, worked there for a few years as a product manager responsible for ML infrastructure. And then last year, I firmly decided to try to start my own company. Before starting Happyverse, I spent a few months at Etched, which is also a startup building ML infrastructure. But earlier this year, I left and went on my own founder journey. So Happyverse is building realistic real-time video agents. We call them confidants for knowledge workers and professionals who want to scale themselves. And we are pre-seed stage, but already have a product launched. And everyone can try our beta at app.happyverse.ai. And yeah, very excited to talk about voice and other things.
Yeah, awesome. So let's start off with you were in product management in
Hmm.
and Google. You were working on AI space, correct?
Yes.
And like I've been in product management for a long time as well, mostly in consumer tech, mostly in entertainment and social media. And I want to get your take on your time at Google first, as in what is product management in the age of AI? How do you actually product manage an AI app? It's from what I've experienced, you can't just have a PRD and expect everything to be built out the way that PRD is, and you do have to take some iteration or some sort of like coding aspects into it, because it's not necessarily an app where you have one way where your customer is going. They can go any number of ways using your AI tools. So let's start off with that, because I'm very interested in how that foundation then led you to Happyverse, and then we'll get into Happyverse.
Absolutely. Well, product management at Google is very different depending on which team you are at, which product you're working on, right? Like in which part of Google you're at in general. So I was in Google Cloud, and I was working on ML infrastructure on Cloud TPU, tensor processing units, which is Google's homegrown custom designed chip for like ML training and ML inference. So I would say it's a different type of product management compared to like even other products within Google Cloud, but especially compared to like YouTube or Google Maps or like more like traditional products, in a
Exactly.
sense that it's a very, very long cycle, right? Like for when I joined Google, it was like second generation, or I think third generation TPU v3 just got launched, and I was working on TPU v4, and I started in 2020, and we announced our public launch only in 2022. So it took like 2 years to bring the product to the market. And then when I was leaving, it was TPU v6 last year. So at some point we started accelerating, and instead of like 2 year cycle, we shifted to 1 year cycle. So launching something every year instead of every couple of years, driven by everything that has been going on since ChatGPT launch, right? Like, and the boom in infrastructure. So interestingly enough, TPU team had only one product manager when I joined, so I was the second one. When I left, we had like maybe like 15 or 20 people. So the team has grown quite a bit, and the business has grown quite a lot as well. But in terms of like PRDs and stuff, like there were two critical things that we were trying to solve for. One is capacity, just like capacity availability. Because of COVID, the supply chain got disrupted. So one of the most challenging tasks was like how to deploy at least some amount of capacity for our customers. And we had internal customers, external customers. And so capacity planning was something that I spent quite a bit of time on. And I was trying to do some kind of interesting applications of AI for my like workflow because I needed to come up with some more or less robust estimates of demand for the next like 2, 3, 5 years. And I was building some apps that I was calling like crystal ball app, like how to predict how much capacity we would actually need or what would be the demand across different regions. Um, so that's number one. Number two was more on the software side, how to make sure that the end user experience is actually great, right? Like for developers, most of our developers were like pretty sophisticated folks, like PhDs who were doing like ML training in
Yeah.
companies like Anthropic. And so I had to learn a lot about the space and like what kinds of problems people were running in, like software side in terms of its usability. Um, but yeah, that was something that I was doing for a few years. Now my product management experience at Google as a CEO, obviously I spent quite a bit of time like doing PM work.
Yeah.
It's very different, but the skill set that I got at Google is still helpful because infrastructure is very important, right? Like for any application that you're building, even if you are using just like API like Gemini or
Yeah.
GPT, you still need to understand like how many tokens you're burning, how to ensure reliability, how to scale from whatever 10 users to 1,000 users. So yeah, I'm grateful for that experience that I had.
Yeah. So how did you come up with the Happyverse idea? How did that lead you to Happyverse?
Yeah, great question. Actually, at some point, I realized that even though I like infrastructure and it's like billions or tens of billions of dollars of investments, big deals, etc., I felt like I wanted to build something useful for people on top of this infrastructure layer and something that brings people happiness. I was actually running my own podcast. Wasn't the podcast, it was more like we were meeting with some interesting business leaders during COVID over Zoom, and we're just like asking questions in like informal environment off the record. And one question that I really liked asking was like, what matters most, or like what's the most important thing for you in life in general, or like what's the meaning of life, like some version of that question, right? And like the answer that I was hearing most often was happiness, like holistic sense of happiness and well-being for yourself, for your family, for your friends. And
Yeah.
so I just had this vague idea of, okay, how can I work on the intersection of AI and happiness? And then my wife also gave me extra motivation because she was a life coach, and she had some customers, some clients that were working with her, but she could only take like 5, 10 customers a week at most. And I was trying to see how I can help her scale with AI. And I realized that just a text bot is not enough, right? Because
Yeah.
it doesn't have that level of connection, authenticity for the end customer. And then I found out about avatars, like video avatars, and started tinkering with Cajun, Synthesia, and like some other products that were available in the market. And that was my wow moment with AI because I was able to build a digital clone of my wife,
Yeah.
and it looked and sounded very real.
Yeah.
And we tested it with her clients. And so I came up with an idea of like creating this helpful, useful digital clones for people like coaches, like consultants, mental health therapists. But then I thought like, okay, this technology has applications beyond just like that specific consulting or therapy. It could be pretty much anything. Like anyone can build a helpful, useful avatar or digital clone that they
Yeah.
can use to promote their product, their company, educate customers, provide some customer support and whatnot. And so I started thinking more and more about that idea. And then I would say like end of last year, probably that's when I formed very strong conviction that I should just go ahead and try to do it, try to build like video avatars, video agents, optimized for user happiness.
Yeah.
So that's the story.
That makes sense. I have a few thoughts around the happiness versus peace. I do think people are
Hmm.
striving for happiness, but I mean we all go through ups and downs in life, and
Yep.
I don't think you'd be happy all the time. But let's, you know, being at peace is one thing, and being happy is another thing. But I like your thesis around going towards that and using technology and AI to do that. Now, I do think there's a huge challenge that you have in front of you because, take, for example, my interaction with you right now or the previous interactions we've had in person. Those interactions have a sense of imperfection built into them, given that we're human. And that sense of imperfection that we have is very difficult to replicate with AI because AI is for the most part trying to become the best it can be and keep perfect at all points of its interaction and is very apologetic. So tell me, with the models that you're using right now, and I'm sure you're using any of the open models that are there, and for voice, for whatever it may be, you haven't built those yourself, I'm assuming. Um, what are some of the challenges you faced, and how did you try to bring more of that humanistic aspect? Because I used your tool, I used Happyverse, of
Yeah,
course I did. I prepared for it, and I love your product, but I didn't feel that connection with that person. Right now, when I talk to you, I'm
yeah,
talking to you virtually,
yeah,
I still feel a connection. I didn't feel that
yeah,
connection. So
yeah.
how are you going about in your product trying to solve that from a tech standpoint, but more
Yeah.
importantly, from product management standpoint?
Totally. Well, great question, or I would say even several questions. First of all, thank you so much for trying our product. I really
Yeah.
appreciate this. Would love some feedback for sure. We are preparing for our sort of GA launch next month, and there's still a lot of work ahead of us, but we are moving pretty fast and have a great team. So you're absolutely right that now is like very early days of video avatars, right? Like I think video avatars now are in like GPT-2 kind of level of text, or maybe like what voice used to be like 2 or 3 years ago. But I'm very excited about the next like 12 to 18 months because there is a lot of progress that we are seeing externally with like within the open source ecosystem, and there is a lot of progress that we see internally at Happyverse in
Yeah.
our small lab. And so uh, I'm pretty sure, like, people like to say, like, the AI you are seeing now is the absolute worst version of AI that would ever exist, right? Like, I
I've seen
agree
worse.
with that.
Those initial, like, Will
Yeah,
Smith,
yeah.
videos you saw, like, a year ago, like, those are pretty bad, but then
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think, look, there's several problems that we need to solve, or the industry needs to solve, right? Like to have these like human-like avatars or like AI humans. People like have different names or different terms to describe like what we are doing. But I think if we break this down into video stack, voice, and brain, um, I would say we see a lot of opportunity on the video side because for what is worse, like big labs have not yet prioritized lip sync models. So these are the types of models we are using to provide this like kind of lip syncing. And there is a lot of alpha, a lot of like room for improvement. And we already have a roadmap of like what we need to do. We know what we need to do, and we got some data and got some um, some learnings over the last few months, like how we can improve on the video side. On the voice side, as you probably know, because you are operating in the voice space, even though like some folks like Cezanne and Hume and like 11 Labs have made progress, with custom voices, it's still harder, right? Because you can create a really decent like stock voice for some demos, or which is not going to resemble the real user. We're trying to even solve a more difficult task, which is like how to make expressive real voice for that would be like my voice, right? Like or your voice or the voice of our other customers. And then on the brain side, I actually slightly disagree with you in terms of, I mean, there is definitely a problem of AI being sycophantic, right? Like just like telling you you are doing great, etc. But the model, well, most of the major models are now pretty customizable in the sense of prompting, right? So you can prompt it to be very blunt. And I actually had a customer recently who was like creating a fitness coach for himself, and he was like, "Oh, I want my fitness coach to be super blunt. I don't want it to be nice with me,
yeah.
sugarcoat things." And then he started testing it, and he was shocked because his fitness coach was like, "Wait, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in the gym right now." Or he was like, "Why are you rambling or giving me some random stuff? I asked you about what exactly you did like in your previous exercise, and you are
Yeah,
telling me
yeah.
some like random
They've
things about
they've
your
gotten
work, etc." So
it's gotten a lot better, so I do agree with you. Um, but I do feel with the prompting, you can make it be who you want it to be. And I've played with the models enough. I'm just asking you, you know yourself that right now it's still AI and you still feel it's AI. So my question is, are you waiting for the models to get better to then have that, or do you think they're good enough and you can get to that point with prompts and knowledge bases?
yeah, yeah, no, great question. So right now we are not trying to necessarily create like a full digital twin. I don't like the term digital twin. I think it works well for like manufacturing, right? Like creating digital twin of some factory or equipment, like creating a full digital twin that has your style, your voice is really hard. And that's probably AGI kind of task for the next like few years. I think what we're doing now is like we're just splitting this into specific use cases, and
Yeah,
we are creating like avatars that can just answer questions about the company, so the FAQ kind of use case, or avatars that can screen candidates for recruiting purposes, or like we're running an experiment with some of our VC investors where any founder can pitch them an idea and the avatar can like ask
yeah,
questions that the investors usually asking. So those use cases tend to be easier compared to just like really replicating the style of the user. However, I have met a couple of founders that told me that they've been working on some customized tuned LLM models that are designed to specifically learn about the user as much as possible by asking them a bunch of questions. And then like they're saying like with 80 to 90% probability, we can answer any question the same way that the actual human would answer it, would respond to a given question. Now, when I heard that, I was very skeptical. I still haven't been able to play with those kinds of APIs or tools,
yeah,
but I think it's coming, right? Because like even back before ChatGPT, if you remember how like Meta or like Facebook before Meta, right? Like how they were able to very closely approximate like users' behavior just based on like likes that they put on certain
correct.
posts
I
on
mean, humans are
Instagram
pretty
or
predictable,
Facebook.
so it's
Exactly.
so I see that. I see that. I see what you're saying, and I agree to it in a sense that we do have the capability of doing it. But I think what is apparent in the voice space is what are the methods by which we get to that? Because what are the success metrics? If you were in, let's say, I've been in the video space, creating streaming apps, and one thing that was very a top line metric for us was total view hours or average view per user, and it was as much as we can get the customer to watch more videos, then that's the things we need to do. So we ran A/B tests, we get to that. Now in the voice space, I don't think it has that clear of a metric yet, as in, do you want to be encouraging more time with the agent, or is actual success actually less time with the agent? uh are you looking for good sentiment, or are you looking for some sort of anger, right? And how do you actually define that for the agent you're creating, and how do you then guide the A/B tests you run or the different feature improvements you run? Because as you know, like,
Yeah.
you're not going to launch a an avatar and say, you know what, it's done, I'm never going to touch it again. There needs to be improvement. So in your mind, how are you
Yeah.
guiding your team to look at what are the metrics for each, I guess, avatar you're using to measure success?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. We have collected quite a bit of just internal data by recording our like internal calls, like engineering calls and customer calls and whatnot. And we want to try to run some experiments where we actually train some text models or tune some text models or like audio to audio models on our own voice and see if we throw more data into the problem, like what kinds of results we can get. So this is a very interesting kind of research kind of exercise, right? Like, and we just hired our head of research, head of ML from Apple, and she would be running some of those experiments. So I'm very excited to see what we would get. And I do not expect any like immediate breakthrough results, but
Yeah.
like, experimentation is like one of the most
So,
important
but
things you can
what
do in
is
this
like that
space.
that metric you're trying to increase with the
Yeah,
experimentation, and or does it just differ
yeah.
depending on the avatar? You think?
So I actually do want, let's say my avatar, I have my like app.happyverse.ai/CEO avatar that has some knowledge about the company, about my background. I want to feed a lot more information, not personal, but more like how I think about the world. Maybe even, maybe I can include our current podcast, right? Like in my
Yeah.
answers and see if some tuned model would be better at responding like to questions like with my style, with my voice, which as you probably noticed, I have some accent, right? So like
Yeah.
most often than not, like TTS models, they correct the accent so
Yeah.
that then it loses like authenticity. Um, but so the metric is like how similar I feel about the clone or the avatar and how other people would feel. Interesting thing that we discovered with our customers, occasionally they say, oh, my voice sounds very, very different. That's not me. But then you ask someone else and they're saying, oh, that's exactly like you.
Yeah.
So there is this kind of paradox that people are not hearing themselves like
So
correctly.
for you,
Uh,
would you want people spending more time with you? Would that be success? Would you want to get to resolution quicker? Would you want them to be happy? Would you want them to be kind of excited?
yeah,
What would be the success
yeah.
metric for you?
Yeah. Great question. So, like for different use cases, of course, there are different metrics, right? So, for example, for screening use case, I just want to make sure that the avatar is asking right questions and providing additional context if something is unclear, and then gets to the end result of like, okay, like by the end of the interview or the session, you either give some feedback or you just collect enough information from whoever is talking to your avatar, right? So that's like the main success is like to make sure that it's as close as possible to the actual interview where your purpose is just to ask questions and collect information and share a little bit about you and your company. For Q&A, like website Q&A, we don't want to go into the route of what most of the customer support chatbots are doing right now, which is like adhering only to the knowledge base, right? Like in 9 out of 10 cases, the answer to your question would be, I don't know, it's not in my knowledge base, or
Yeah.
can I help you with something else, right? So we want this to be a bit more conversational, where like, yeah, if you even if there's a sensitive question or some dumb question or whatever, like the avatar actually finds some answer that sort of makes sense, like something that the human would actually say. So we do want to have, and you're asking a good question as a product manager, right? It's like, what is that metric? And it's kind of hard to say how to quantify it, right? Like, is it like 1 to 10, how close it is to me, or 1 to 10, how happy the user is? I think at the end of the day, of course, like CSAT, right? Like user happiness is like the main objective. So for our customers, for example,
Or it
some of them
might
just
be the other objective. You might wanna create an avatar that makes you sad or makes you scared. You watch right? You
yeah,
watch a movie to get sad, you watch a scary movie to get scared. So I think there's a
yeah,
lot of different ways of looking at it.
yeah. Well, by the way, to your earlier point, the way I think about happiness is not that it's like this kind of sense of joy that is like never ending. That's you can only get this on drugs or whatever, right? Like,
And
of
drugs
course, like,
end
there
as
are ups
well.
and downs. Exactly. So, or watching TikTok, constant
Yeah.
dopamine loop, right? That's not what we're solving for. When we're saying happiness, we mean that, of course, there will be ups and downs, but the overall trend should be like positive, and you should be kind of happy to wake up in the morning and like go and do your job, or I don't know, kiss your spouse, or like whatever makes you alive, right? and not feeling like you are wasting your time, wasting your life, because it's so precious, right? Like all of us are in this world, and what's the probability like of us getting to where we got throughout the evolution is pretty low. And so yeah, so I think like in terms of metrics, like it depends on specific customers. Like we have some customers that just care about sales conversion, like somebody visiting their website, somebody talking to their avatar. They want to make sure that this person like leaves an email or does some call to action, like even makes an appointment or some purchase, and we already have that functionality embedded into our avatars. So it's less about necessarily like realism and like replicating all the nuances of the founder. It's more about just like making sure that you convert your website visitors into paid customers, right? But in order to do that, though, you still need to have some level of realism. You still need to have some level of fun, level of like wow effect, and I would say that we are getting there. Like I am, it's kind of seeing like the progress that our team has accomplished in the last like 3 to 6 months. I'm actually pretty happy. Where we were 6 months ago, it was very, very different compared to like where
Yeah.
we are now, right? And
Do you attribute that to
but
the LLMs and voice technologies getting better, or do you attribute that to you understanding how to use them better, or a little bit of both?
I think it's a little bit of both. I well, to be honest, I have not seen specific breakthroughs or either on LLM side or voice side in the last 6 months since the moment we started. I mean, GPT-5 got released when I think like August-ish timeframe. So we hooked up GPT-5. We did not necessarily see a huge improvement compared to, let's say, Gemini, Flash 2.0, 2.5 that we were using before. And by the way, for us, it's also important to make sure that the model can run with low latency, which is not always the case, especially for some of those beefier models. On voice side, we've been predominantly like using 11 labs and testing some other tools in parallel, some other providers. I have not seen any breakthroughs as well. So I think the answer to your question is mostly us knowing how to use those tools,
Mm-hmm.
how to tune them for our specific use cases, to run them real time with video. And yeah, it's just like constant learning and trying to learn and put your learnings into production as
Yeah.
fast as possible.
Okay. So last question, I'll end it here. Given that your answer was it's you knowing how to use the tools better, what's one or two really poignant and direct pieces of advice you can give to people, either on the prompt side, the knowledge base side, or I would say any other side you think? Those are the only two ones I could think of that really I think you can give advice to that are actionable to our audience is on the prompt or the knowledge base side. What are some tips and tricks? What are some like poignant pointers or advice you can give to people creating voice or video experiences that are interactive, that are agentic?
Two things come to my mind. One, I would say it's extremely hard to do video in real time. Like before starting to do this, I had an idea of like how it could be done, and I knew it would be hard. But once you start getting into it, like running voice in real time is hard. Running video is even harder. And the good news is that we are about to launch our API for developers, and so whoever wants to try avatars in real time as an API, we will be able to provide it starting from November. But the other learning that I got is sometimes like you need to go all the way to perfection, right? Like trying to make a perfect prompt for a specific model and doing a bunch of iterations with one single avatar, let's say, right? Like with one single use case or one single customer. What I learned is that there is value in just going a bit broader and like trying to do a bit simpler versions of prompting, or maybe not necessarily perfect voice setup,
Mm-hmm.
just to increase the number of experiments that you are having, right? And then collecting this data and then seeing like the distribution. Okay, which cases were successful, where we got positive feedback, where we got negative feedback, right? And how we can, work on what didn't work, but rely on the strengths, what actually worked. And so I think oftentimes people think like, oh, you have to just have like one single customer happy and the whole team should be just sitting with just one customer at a time. So we decided to go with more like a couple of dozen of customers, and then a few hundred of like less white glove customers. And I think that was really really useful because everyone is so different, right? Like you can show exactly the same demo to two people, and like one would be super happy, and the other one would be very unhappy, and that's also helped you calibrate your go-to-market focus.
So your take is, in the end, and I totally agree with you, is voice products or any product that has interaction then is a consumer product. You have to go to your customer, get early feedback, and iterate on that prompt and iterate on that experience before you put it in front of a general audience.
Oh, that absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think running beta before you go big on marketing or whatever is like super important. One of our indirect investors, like Reid Hoffman, he famously said, like, if you are launching something and you are not ashamed or you're not embarrassed, it means you launched too late.
Yeah,
And I think that's true to a certain degree. But like on the other hand, if you haven't tested your product at least with a few dozen customers, probably you should really test it. It's important from quality perspective, from sort of willingness to pay, and so on and so forth. Um, but yeah, one final thing also I would mention, and that's I think something that you are doing, Argam, right? Like analytics is also like a very important and underinvested field, right? Like analyzing those conversations in a not sort of anonymized basis, and like figuring out ways how you can use this data to improve your product. Um, yeah, like right, like just collecting data maybe is not enough. It's just also like what kind of insights you can get from that data. What
correct.
is noise versus like real signal, right? So that's a very important problem as well.
Yeah. And I inherently believe a human to human interaction is different than a human to computer interaction, at least right now, and needs to be analyzed in a different way. So that's I think the hypothesis and I'm going on, and I truly believe it because of the things you've said as well. It's apparent that when you're doing a human to computer interaction, there's so many different things you have to think about and so many different things you consistently have to improve and iterate on, that it's not like training a human, because a human tends to have cognition and understand things, have emotions, and computers devoid of emotions. And when you take that out of it, that emotion part makes a huge difference in how you must train the model or train your agent. So
100%.
yeah. So anyway, so thank you, Max. Great success to you. If anybody wants, sign up at Happyverse. Great product, great leader. Max is one of the very smart individuals I've met in the space. So thank you for taking the time and have a great trip.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Awesome.
Take
Bye.
care.